When people are asked to explain the plot of Robert Louis Stevenson's 1886 novella The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, common responses are that it is about a good man who drinks a potion that turns him into an evil man, or that Dr. Jekyll takes a potion which causes him to develop a split personality named Mr. Hyde that habitually takes over his body and controls his actions. These same sentiments are generally echoed throughout adaptations featuring Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, with Jekyll being portrayed as the good kind doctor whose scientific curiosity causes him to transform into the monstrous and malevolent Mr. Edward Hyde, and while Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde share a body, they may as well be completely separate entities. Jekyll is the good side, Hyde is the bad side. Some adaptations even have Jekyll and Hyde as rivals to each other, interfering in each other's affairs and sometimes even outright interacting with each other in specific instances where the two sides are somehow separated. Other adaptations depict the relationship between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as something more akin to dissociative identity disorder, or DID, which was formerly known as multiple personality disorder. This is a marginally more grounded interpretation of the character that many people take at face value, as the idea of two personalities or identities inhabiting the same body seems to fit in with the generalized description of DID, which is characterized by two or more personality states or alters. This interpretation of Jekyll and Hyde has infiltrated pop culture and the public consciousness at large, with movie and TV adaptations depicting Mr. Hyde as Dr. Jekyll's alternate personality, his darker half who takes control. The phrase Jekyll and Hyde is often described for people whose personality seems to shift 180 degrees and is generally used in a negative context. In fact, this depiction of Jekyll and Hyde as separate personalities, one good and one evil, has served as the basis for several comic book characters such as the Incredible Hulk, Two-Face, and the Green Goblin.
Sam Raimi gave me Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde to read before I did that.
But this common portrayal makes The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde one of the most misinterpreted works of fiction I have ever encountered. When the very phrase Jekyll and Hyde is misused to describe characters or people with a split personality, therefore taking on a meaning that isn't accurate to the book, we have an extreme case of dilution via many adaptations all piggybacking off one another. You see, the original work of fiction, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, was a mystery. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde scarcely appear in the story and are mostly mentioned, with characters such as Jekyll's lawyer Gabriel Utterson taking the spotlight as they witness the strange events surrounding Jekyll and his supposed involvement with the mysterious Mr. Hyde. Throughout the novel, which features Jekyll naming Edward Hyde as the sole beneficiary of his last will and testament, Utterson assumes that Mr. Hyde is blackmailing Dr. Jekyll, and the reader is strung along to believe the same thing, with there even being a suggestion that Hyde may be Jekyll's illegitimate son. It isn't until the very end of the novel, when Hyde is found dead in Jekyll's laboratory, that the truth is discovered. There has never been a movie adaptation that faithfully, or even closely, follows the plot of the novella. This can be explained as the twist ending of the novel, i.e. Jekyll and Hyde being one and the same, being so well known that it seems unnecessary for any adaptation of the source material to maintain the air of mystery. Also, since the titular characters don't even appear in person for much of the story, a faithful adaptation might have bored general audiences. Instead, the early theatre and film adaptations of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde tend to push Utterson to the side, or even out of the adaptation entirely, and focuses on Dr. Jekyll, making him and Mr. Hyde the main characters, and outright showing Jekyll's transformations into Mr. Hyde from the get-go, removing any semblance of a mystery from the story. Often they even give Jekyll and Hyde a love interest each, with Dr. Jekyll getting a pious, demure woman from high society, and Mr. Hyde getting involved with a raunchy, lower-class woman. Calling the latter a love interest is a little misleading though, as Hyde tends to mistreat the lower-class woman from the offset, and said lower-class woman generally doesn't have a happy ending, while Jekyll's girlfriend or fiancé or whatever generally makes it through the story unscathed. Now, the reason why featuring Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as the main characters would involve a restructuring of Jekyll/Hyde's characterization is likely because filmmakers and companies wanted Dr. Jekyll to be a sympathetic good guy to Mr. Hyde's unsympathetic bad guy. The visual medium of film would also grant the opportunity to focus on the contrast between mild-mannered, upper-class Dr. Jekyll and the monstrous, deformed and wicked Mr. Hyde. Physical depictions of Hyde vary wildly throughout adaptations. In the novella, Hyde is described as pale and dwarfish, giving an impression of deformity without any nameable malformation. So essentially, Mr. Hyde from the book is short, pale, and seemingly deformed, yet those who see his face find it difficult to actually describe his features, recalling only a vague sense of revulsion upon looking at him. In many adaptations, Mr. Hyde has a more easily described appearance. Sometimes he has green skin. Other times he has Neanderthal or ape-like features, probably owing to the description of Hyde being troglodytic and having an ape-like fury. In the 1920 and 1931 film adaptations, he has an oddly shaped skull that also evokes the appearance of a troglodyte or a Neanderthal. Some adaptations actually make Mr. Hyde physically bigger than Dr. Jekyll. In The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Van Helsing, he is a big pink Hulk for some reason. Sometimes they actually make Mr. Hyde more attractive than Dr. Jekyll, maybe because he is described in the book as being physically younger than Jekyll. But all of this serves to provide a clearer distinction between Jekyll and Hyde, thereby making it easier to believe that these are separate identities inhabiting a body that physically alters to show which personality is in control. The reason why so many people assume that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is about a man with a split personality is probably because they have consumed these adaptations and not the source material, because anyone who has read the book should be able to recognize that the story is not about multiple personalities. The story is not about a man who splits his identity into a good side and a bad side. There is only one side, and that is Dr. Jekyll. There is no Mr. Hyde. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is not a story about a good man who drinks a potion that turns him into a bad man. It is a story about a bad man with a good reputation who drinks a potion that physically alters his appearance so he can do bad things and get away with it. In the final chapter, we learn from Dr. Jekyll's own account of the events of the story that he was in control the entire time. After a wild youth full of controversial yet discreet misbehaviors, Dr. Jekyll has grown up to become a well-respected middle-aged doctor with an impeccable reputation among those in high society. In Victorian London no less, where class is everything, and everyone was so repressed that it was practically mandatory for women to wear gloves in public, and those who didn't may as well have walked around in public without their shoes. That's probably why sickos like Jack the Ripper popped up around that time. In fact, the Jack the Ripper murders occurred 2 years after the publication of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In such a society where etiquette, propriety, and decency were revered above all things, Dr. Jekyll's repression would reach new heights, and he would find himself aching for the freedom to indulge in wildness and debauchery as he did in his youth. So he created the potion that physically changed his appearance, and while appearing in this pale dwarfish form he called himself Mr. Hyde, which is an obvious reference to the fact that he is hiding in this form as he goes out and performs all kinds of depravity, which is generally kept ambiguous throughout the story, but we know it includes violence and straight-up murder when he does a Mario's brother and kills an upper-class prominent member of Parliament on the streets one night. It is the death of this MP that is ultimately Jekyll/Hyde's downfall, as Mr. Hyde goes from a disreputable character to a full-blown killer, and not just any killer, but a killer of politicians. With law enforcement hot on his heels and his colleague Utterson starting to put the pieces together, Dr. Jekyll finds himself losing control over his physical transformations into Mr. Hyde, and ends up writing a letter that explains his actions before doing himself in before he can be apprehended and taken to the gallows. Okay, so Dr. Jekyll has been in control this whole time, and Mr. Hyde is simply a made-up persona. But where are my sources? Well, let's look at the source material itself. In Jekyll's final testament, in the final chapter, he continuously refers to himself as I while describing Hyde's actions. I looked in the mirror and saw Hyde, the pleasures I sought in my disguise. I awoke to see the hand of Hyde. I mauled the unresisting body, and finally I saw my life to be forfeit. Those last two quotes describe the simultaneous horror and pleasure he experiences after murdering the MP, Sir Danvers Carew, and Jekyll's fear of losing his reputation as a good person. There are moments during Jekyll's letter where he does refer to Mr. Hyde as a separate person who thinks and acts independently from Jekyll, stating that while he wants to commit the sins of Hyde, Mr. Hyde doesn't value Jekyll's wealth, friends, or reputation. But even then, he does go on to refer to Jekyll in a similarly dissociative way, while comparing himself and Hyde. Not to mention that this final letter is titled Henry Jekyll's Full Statement of the Case, but was written while he was physically transformed as Mr. Hyde, and in said statement he still uses I statements while recalling the moments where he was physically Dr. Jekyll. Another piece of fiction that is ostensibly original but draws strong parallels to Jekyll and Hyde is the 2024 film The Substance. In fact, I have started referring to it as my second favourite adaptation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, with the 1931 movie being my favourite, but we'll get to that later. For those who don't know what The Substance is about, get out of here and go watch it. For those who do know what The Substance is about, you'll know that it features a woman who starts taking a mysterious substance to create a younger physical form, so she can swap between her original body and this younger body, and do the things that she could when she was younger before she reached middle age, and the industry turned on her as it so often does to women of a certain age. While the main character does not use this new physical form to commit atrocities like Dr. Jekyll does as Mr. Hyde, the act of physically transforming into a younger, more primal form and living a double life under a made-up name is straight out of Jekyll and Hyde. If the scene with the POV shot of her looking in the mirror after her first transformation isn't an homage to the 1931 film, I don't know what is. People also compare this movie to The Picture of Dorian Gray, but the reason I liken it to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in this video is because the two bodies, Elizabeth and Sue, are two identities that belong to one individual. Although it is a little ambiguous, ultimately they are the same person. Much like Jekyll and Hyde, it is an allegory for substance abuse and addiction, rather than a split personality. But when presented with the opportunity to embrace freedom and youth with a new face and a new persona, would you behave exactly the same as you do now? If you could do whatever you wanted with impunity because you could hide behind a different face, what would you do? There's a reason criminals hide their faces while carrying out their misdeeds. When you hide your identity, you hide your shame, and you are more likely to avoid the consequences of your actions. People even do it online. If you're just a fake name and an anime profile picture, you can say anything you want, especially the things you'd never say to someone in person. But I digress. As I mentioned before, the 1931 film Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is my favourite Jekyll and Hyde adaptation of all time. It also doesn't follow the source material all that faithfully, bringing in the two love interests for Jekyll and Hyde, but in all honesty I enjoy this movie better than the source material because I find that these two women embody Jekyll's apparent values and his hidden desires. They personify the battle within Dr. Jekyll as he struggles to maintain the facade of a good, decent person, while secretly wanting to behave like a hideous, abusive monster. There's also no real indication that Jekyll and Hyde are separate entities in this particular movie. At one point, Mr. Hyde refers to Jekyll as the man he hates the most, but that can be easily read as a veiled reference towards his own self-loathing as he feels conflicted about his actions. And also in that exact same scene, he does say, "I am Jekyll," while he's Mr. Hyde. There's also a scene where he visits Jekyll's fiancée as Mr. Hyde, and there's no indication that he's going to hurt her, as he hurts everyone around him as Mr. Hyde. So Jekyll may well be in control during his scenes as Hyde. The crazy part is that this movie is arguably the blueprint for most of the adaptations that followed it, yet people still get it wrong. Hyde is nothing more than Dr. Jekyll's way of being able to do what he wants with impunity. Surely Mr. Hyde's transformation back into Dr. Jekyll in front of Hasty Lanyon would be against Mr. Hyde's interest if he were in fact a completely separate identity. The closest adaptation would have to be the Australian animation by Burbank Films, but even that strays substantially, featuring Jekyll and Hyde front and centre while not bothering with preserving the twist, and depicting the two as separate identities. Also, I'm pretty sure that a mouse doesn't transform into a Hyde mouse in the book. People have said that the only way to include the so-called twist ending in a Jekyll and Hyde adaptation would be by disguising the fact that it is a Jekyll and Hyde adaptation, so that the audience doesn't know that they are bearing witness to a Jekyll-Hyde situation until the twist is revealed. And they wouldn't know because the movie wouldn't be called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, they'd have to call it something else and change all of the characters' names. But I'm not so sure. I don't know how many people in my generation or subsequent generations even know who Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is, and what their story entails. If you've reached the end of the video though, you're one of the few who do know the truth. There is no Mr. Hyde.